Burnham. You see him on the screen. He is the new Prime Minister of United Kingdom. He replaced Keir Starmer last month. He had been a mayor of the city of Manchester. He knew governance at the local level. And based on that, he says, let's have a written constitution for United Kingdom. So let's get the basics about what is a constitution, what is a written constitution, what is an unwritten constitution, what is constitutionalism, what is constitutional morality. We'll spare a second for that also. And then we'll look at the global picture, and then we'll zoom in on why the new British Prime Minister is proposing that there should be a codified constitution. Now, so how is Britain governed? Britain means we should understand that there are 4 quote-unquote countries. One is England, that is another is Scotland, another is Wales, and still another is Northern Ireland. All the 4 are called, curiously, countries. They are not nation states. All of them together are UK, United Kingdom. Whether you call it Great Britain or Britain, it is the same, and it includes England, Wales, and Scotland. So you've got 4 countries. You've got a sovereign country by the name of UK, and you've got another term called Great Britain, which is a longer form of Britain. So now let's see what is the pattern of governance of Britain. You know, Britain is the mother of all democracies. Since Magna Carta, about 800 years back, its governance model has been evolving. There have been conventions, that is unwritten rules, which are followed as if they are written rules. Conventions are there. And similarly, customs are there. Precedents are there. Laws made by the legislature, that is the British Parliament, are there. And the decisions of the judiciary, the courts are there. You call that common law. And you also have the orders and notifications given by the executive. All of them together constitute the basis for the governance of UK. But it's popularly known as uncodified, unwritten constitution. Why? Compare that with India or America or rest of the world. When I say rest of the world, almost rest of the world, I'll come back to that. You will know what is uncodified, unwritten. Come to India, between 1946 and 49, you have had a constituent assembly that has drafted the constitution, and finally on the 26th of November 1949, we adopted the constitution. It comes into force on the 26th of January the next year, which is 1950. This is what you call a written constitution. And there is a single document, sacred law, foundational law, what in Germany they call basic law, Grundnorm. You don't have anything like that in Britain. You have a whole host of what I already told you, conventions and laws and judicial decisions, which is common law, and everything else put together, forming the foundation for governance of the British political system. So that is what is known as unwritten, but technically and quite correctly it should be called uncodified. Is Britain the only country where you have an uncodified constitution? No. You have the colony of Britain, New Zealand, where it is the same. They have also evolved identically. They also don't have a written constitution. Are they the only two? No. Israel is there. Remember, Israel got the country in 1948. Right after that, they wanted to draft a constitution. They came together, discussed, debated, could not arrive at a consensus on a variety of items. For example, should it be a Jewish state or non-theocratic state? What should be the level of liberties? how much power should be given to the courts, how much power should be given to the parliament. All these items, they did not end up in a consensus, and therefore they abandoned writing out the constitution. And today, Israel is governed on the basis of a few basic laws. B capital, L capital, basic laws. Here you have basic laws. These basic laws are the basis for the governance. Basic law, of course, is the most popular in the case of Germany. We'll come back to that. So now, you have written constitutions, which is the global norm. You have uncodified constitutions, which is an exception. There must be advantages to both, otherwise there won't be these constitutions in vogue. So if you have a written constitution like in India, you have, what is the constitution to begin with? You know, constitution is the basis for governance. Constitution sets up institutions, endows them with powers, limits their powers, establishes the relationships among the institutions, confers on the citizens and others rights, fundamental rights, and may also, in a socialist constitution, obligate the citizens to discharge fundamental duties, and so on and so forth. So that is what you call a constitution. Parliament makes a law. That law has to be in line with the constitution. For example, the strength of the Supreme Court has been enhanced to 38 inclusive of the CJI yesterday. That had to be in line with Article 124. So constitution is the basis for entire legal system, and that is a definition of the constitution. There is a philosophy called constitutionalism. It says that you have to have a constitution for the governance, otherwise you cannot limit the powers. If you don't limit the powers of the institutions like parliament and executive bureaucracy, then that will be a threat to the fundamental rights and liberties of the citizens and others. Therefore, there has to be a governance framework which is the foundation, and that is protection for liberties of the citizens and even others in the country. That is constitutionalism. It reminds you of the concept of rule of law, which says the same thing. Governance cannot be arbitrary. There should be written down rules for the governance of the country. And liberties are pre-law. Law recognizes them and enforces them. Separation of powers and all that is built into the larger philosophy of rule of law. So rule of law and constitutionalism are sister concepts that confer liberties, protect liberties by limiting the powers of the institutions like parliament, executive, etc. So that is constitutionalism. We know what is a codified constitution. We have it in India. It reflects the definition of the constitution. Uncodified, you have it in Britain, Israel, and New Zealand. And uncodified has apparently, according to a section of scholars, certain advantages. For example, flexibility. In India we are very rigid because we have a constitution that can be amended only very difficult manner, whereas in Britain they can make and unmake laws at the will of the parliament. So that flexibility may have certain advantages. Also, parliament consists of people, people's representatives, the popular voice. And if you give parliament the supreme sovereign power, you are enabling people as, basically you are enabling people. So yes, people's power, but don't think that uncodified constitution always goes along with sovereign parliament. Israel parliament is not sovereign, British parliament is sovereign. So uncodified constitution may have a sovereign parliament, may not have a sovereign parliament. But remember, if you are a federal country, you have to have a written constitution because distribution of powers between the union and the states is necessarily a written matter, a written affair. But Britain is not a federal country, it is a unitary country. That is, the power is centered in the union government, and the provinces enjoy, states enjoy as much power as is conferred on them by the Union Parliament. But Andy Burnham's proposals, his idea that we write the Constitution may involve making British unitary system quasi-federal. Let's see why. Let's see how. You know, Andy Burnham says, the new Prime Minister of Britain, UK, he says that we need to have a written constitution. There should be clear-cut principles that guide the operation of the polity, functioning of the polity. You know, Britain, as I said, Britain means UK, as I said, is a unitary country. In the 90s, you had laws made under which you have the parliaments, you know, Scottish Parliament, Welsh Parliament, and the Legislative Assembly of Northern Ireland. These are the local legislatures to whom a lot of power has been devolved. Remember, devolved. What is devolved? The union government at its own sweet will makes a law transferring powers, but the transfer is at the mercy of the union government. The union government chooses to transfer power. It is not inherent in these local legislatures. It is not autonomy of the states given to them by a written document called the Constitution. It is the discretionary power of the Parliament of UK which has given the Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland local legislatures power over education, health, transport, etc. Remember, in Britain, Parliament is sovereign, which means that tomorrow, if a new party comes, for example, Reform Party, they don't agree with what the Labour has done, they don't want the provinces to be strong, they can take back all the powers and make the provinces, the so-called countries, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, look like municipalities. So Andy Burnham wants to prevent that. He believes that the power that is devolved has to be nailed into a written constitution so that these provinces are quasi-federally constructed to have their own powers given to them by virtue of a written constitution that a future parliament cannot flexibly alter to their disadvantage. This is the primary driver of the new Prime Minister's idea that we should write the Constitution out. And what else is guiding his preference for a written Constitution? You know, you want investment in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland. Why will anyone invest unless they know that the constitutional framework is for sure and it cannot be altered against the interests of the investor? They won't invest. So for investment to come, which is not happening to UK because they pulled out of EU 10 years back, exactly 10 years back, they would like a written constitution guaranteeing the investors that their investment is welcome and protected. Also remember, the devolution of powers itself has to be protected because people have to have their expectations met about what to have from the local legislatures. And therefore, you have to freeze it into a written constitution. Thirdly, please remember, Andy Burnham is inspired by the basic law of Germany, which says that the richer regions must contribute to the welfare and growth of the poorer regions, which is what in the Indian language we call, Indian macroeconomic language we call, regional economic imbalances being muted. Balanced regional development, regional geographical equity, that is what we call. German basic law says that should be the aim of the constitution. So he would like that written into the expected, anticipated, codified constitution of Great Britain. This is how he visualizes a written constitution. What will happen to the monarchy? Monarchy can be there. There are constitutional monarchies. We have them in Spain, we have them in Netherlands, we have them in Norway, we have them in Sweden, we have them in Japan. You can have a constitutional monarchy. The monarchy will be as silent as it has always been, and that will be written into the constitution that this is a ceremonial institution which cannot exercise any real power at all. What about the sovereignty of the Parliament? Parliament can be made sovereign in certain areas. For example, the powers which are given to the so-called countries, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, they are permanent. They cannot be altered by the Parliament. But Parliament is sovereign in other spheres. That sort of a flexibility can be built into the written constitution as well. These are the two important aspects about the expected written constitution of Britain. So this is where we stand now. We have seen what is the constitution. We have seen written, unwritten. We have seen constitutionalism and its relation to rule of law. Constitutional morality. Remember one thing. A written constitution is not the last word, and an uncodified constitution is not a non-democratic authoritarian regime. Britain doesn't have a codified constitution. It is the mother of all democracies. Pakistan has a written constitution since 1973, and we know what Pakistan's constitution is. It is not the basis of their governance. It is there only to mock at the polity of Pakistan. So a written constitution is not a guarantee of good governance. An unwritten one is not a letdown on good governance. Take, for example, Indian Constitution. We have a mixture of rigidity and flexibility as far as amending the Constitution is concerned. You know, Article 368. Federal aspects are rigid. They can only be amended by a special majority in Parliament, and you have to have half the states endorsing it. And within the Parliament, both the houses have to pass it independent of each other. There is no joint session in case of there is a deadlock. And flexibility is there as far as the non-federal matters is concerned, where the states don't come into the picture. And rigidity is there for federal matters. So these are some of the niceties from Indian Constitution, German Constitution, etc. that the new British Prime Minister can look to for making the British Constitution of the future codified and a model one. Remember, we borrowed so many aspects from so many countries, from America, Britain, Canada, Australia, Germany, South Africa, Japan, and where not. That is why at the time of the birth of the Constitution, we had 395 articles, and today we have almost 450 articles. Even then, we have amended our Constitution 106 times. That shows how we are adapting to the emerging challenges and needs and demands. So, Andy Burnham will enrich the country enormously if he looks to the India's Constituent Assembly and the working of Indian polity with a codified constitution and also the features about the basic features of the Constitution that the Supreme Court laid down, Keshavananda Bharati verdict. All these matters are a big source of light for the future British codified constitution. In order to know much more about all these aspects, historically, conceptually, and otherwise, this is the book for you. We consider this the best book. We would love you to challenge our idea that it is the best book. I wish you all the best.